Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Merrillville Town Council meeting for today, Tuesday, October 24th at 6:30 p.m. Please stand for our invocation and then a moment of silence.
Let us pray. Oh, gracious God, we give you thanks for your abundant blessing that we have experienced in this place, in our community. We ask that you continue to watch over us, help us to be safe. We also pray that you would attend to these deliberations, that you'd bless the decisions so that they be done in accordance with your will for the benefit of all with equity and fairness. Thank you, Lord, for your marvelous love and your incredible blessing through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
With everything happening in the world today, we certainly do need a moment of silence. Let's do that now. Mr. Hardaway, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Madam Clerk Treasurer, could you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Councilwoman Neal.
Here.
Councilman Hardaway. Here. Councilman Minchuk. Here. Councilwoman Uzelak.
Here.
Councilman Pettit. Here. Councilman White.
Here.
And Councilman Bello.
Present.
All seven present.
Moving on tonight to petitions, communications, acknowledgements, and remonstrations. We have an Employee of the Month presentation. Mr. Griffin?
Mr. President, members of the council, Madam Clerk Treasurer, thank you. Chief Nuisance, will you join me, please?
Sure. At the podium. Michael, if you don't mind.
I
Yep.
beg your pardon, so I can be heard. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I have to be heard, apparently. This is only the second time I've had the opportunity to represent the full town council, it's the elected leadership of our community, to do this act, which I think is so wonderful. Given my 30 years of prior experience in municipal service, we didn't have anything quite like it, and now I feel a little bad because we should have. This is a wonderful thing. Even for the people that get embarrassed to be recognized, I see she is a bit. But let me tell you what I think makes the rationale for this so complete. I'm going to quote Voltaire because Chief Nuisance thought I might not, but I feel I should. That was a little bit funny, perhaps. Voltaire said that by appreciation, we make the excellence in others our own. I think that's the rationale that the council had in establishing this recognition, and I'm proud to, on their behalf, represent them. So, Chief, I'm going to actually ask you to sum it up. Lori Sanfratello, please.
Lori, can you please come up?
And if you'd like to read this aloud, I know you're holding that, so it'll help if I do this.
Sure.
This certificate is presented on behalf of the town council, and we would like the department head to read this in recognition of Ms. Sanfratello, who is this month's Employee of the Month.
Sure. This certificate is proudly presented to Lori Sanfratello for your initiative to go above and beyond expectations of duties for the Merrillville Police Department. You are dedicated, committed, loyal, always complete the large workload without complaints. Awarded this 24th day of October 2023.
When I onboarded this last month, one of the second support staff people I got to meet was Ms. Sanfratello. And I actually met her one time before on a tax talk. She is very committed and devoted to her work. She does it with aplomb and skill. And I haven't seen her one time I saw her not smile, but it was on some other basis. She generally discharges her work with verve. So on behalf of the town council and also your department head, it is my honor to present this certificate to you in recognition of being our Employee of the Month, along with that gift. Thank you for the value that you add to the town of Merrillville and your service. Thank you very much. Chief?
And also on behalf of the police department, we'd like to present you these flowers and the card as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything that you do.
Congratulations, Lori.
That's okay.
I want to add that everyone looks pretty in pink tonight. As you guys know, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is held in October every year. It aims to promote screening and prevention of the disease, which affects 1 in 8 women in the United States every year and 2.3 million women worldwide. Known best for its pink-themed color, the month features a number of campaigns and programs conducted by groups ranging from breast cancer advocacy organizations to local community organizations to local governments like ours, aimed at supporting people diagnosed with breast cancer, including metastatic breast cancer, educating people about breast cancer risk factors, and stressing the importance of regular screening starting at age 40 or an age that's appropriate for your personal breast cancer risk. This is why tonight our elected officials and support staff and department heads have been wearing pink for October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I thank you all for doing that. Appreciate it. Under communications, I did receive a memorandum from interim town manager Mike Griffin. It's a request to add an addition to the agenda. This would be for an ordinance 23-25 due to the Budget and Finance Committee and ways to conserve current year's budget authority in order to make it available for a proposed budget of 2024. We'll have to taken up our adoption this evening. In fact, at recent meetings, it tasked the financial advisor and me to confer and seek suggested ways to preserve as much of the proposed budget for 2024 as resources would allow. The ordinance, excuse me, Jeff. The ordinance, which Michael's prepared, is proposed to identify current appropriations that might produce up to $100,000 of savings in the current year that could then be applied toward the benefit for fiscal year 2024 budget.
Motion put it on the agenda.
Second.
That's perfect, thanks. Motion by Mr. Minchuk, second by Mr. Pettit, to add to the agenda ordinance 23-25. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will add that to tonight's agenda, Mike, at the appropriate place.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have the accounts payable voucher approval for October 24th, the approval of the town council meeting minutes of October 10th, the approval of the Budget and Finance Committee meetings of October 4th, October 12th, and October 17th.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Uzelak with a second by Mr. Pettit for approval as the consent agenda as submitted. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Moving on tonight to standing and special committee reports, Budget and Finance, Mr. Hardaway.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Later on in the meeting, we will have ordinance number 23-24, our budget for 2024. And as you mentioned earlier, we'll have another ordinance 23-25 that we'll be hearing on first reading. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hardaway. Council Affairs, Mr. Pettit.
No report.
Street Department, Mr. Minchuk.
No report, other than we're just waiting for the leaves to fall.
Slow.
After today's wind, I'm sure they're blowing around somewhere.
Yep.
Mr. Griffin, do me a favor and thank the Street Department, too. We had a few residents that still had branches out, not realizing the deadline, and the Street Department went out and picked them up. That's going above and beyond. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll convey your sentiment.
Thank you. Elections, Public Relations, and Town Beautification, Councilwoman Neal.
Thank you, President Bella. I just wanted to say thank you to all of the residents that have scanned the QR code thus far. We have 120 new signups since that QR code has went out, which that means that's 120 residents that are now getting a lot of great updated information from the town of Merrillville. If you have other family members that have not, please make sure that they do scan the QR code and sign up to receive information from the town. So I'm very proud about that. Also, we are still planning for our trunk or treat. It is this Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30. Rain or shine, we're still planning to have the trunk or treat outside. So make sure that the kids do come out to participate in that. We've put a lot of effort. This is our first trunk or treat, I believe, I was told, and I've been working really hard with a great group from the Dean and Barbara Center, supporting them in their efforts to make sure that we have a great event for that.
Great.
And of course, we still have we're still in the midst of planning for our Christmas tree lighting. We did get the approval from the community schools, so they will be heavily involved in it. So we're looking to have a great big community event for the Christmas tree lighting in December. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Environmental Affairs, Mr. White.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The CDC for Lake County, we're still at the low level in terms of the coronavirus transmissions, for a better lack of words. And I think we had less than one death, which is probably zero, basically. I'd like to make that statement. And I don't know if Ms. Marge had anything she wanted to add to it, or Ms. Neal had anything that she wanted to add to it.
No, but Walgreens and other drugstores are giving the flu shots and the COVID shots too, if people are interested.
Okay.
Or they could go to their doctor too, for the flu shot.
Okay. Additionally, I want to bring in I just wanted to check back with Mr. Hardaway about the potential mold down there at the city mall down there. I don't know if you had gotten in touch with the health department there.
As I stated last time, Mr. White, that is a county problem, and we have no jurisdiction over the county. And the county has been contacted, so that's as far as I can go with it. I have no contacts at the county.
Okay, Mr. President, that's it.
Thank you. Personnel Policy and Employee Benefits, Mr. Hardaway.
No report.
Public Safety, Mr. Minchuk.
The only thing I have at this time, this has been addressed already, but I've been fielding a lot of calls lately about the reoccurring and overwhelming traffic problem we have in town. People are thankful for some of the measures we took with the speed humps and the traffic signs and the speed signs and all that, and they're very thankful for that. But as you addressed it a few months ago, those are only tools that we're trying to put in our box to help alleviate this problem. I know that the council president has put in for a townwide traffic study. Once we get that study back, we're going to look into this further and hopefully take this to the next level. So I know everybody sees the problems out there. We see the problems out there as well. We are trying to attack this problem. We're going to do what we can to hopefully bring it down. So hang in there with us, please. That's all I got.
Thank you. Economic Development, Mr. Pettit.
Mr. President, I'd like to turn it over to Councilman Minchuk with regard to the infamous Mo's building. Jeff?
Yes. With the help of our town attorney, the property formerly known as Mo's Garage or Mo Garage has been acquired by the town. As soon as we acquired the property, we went ahead and changed the locks. We went over there and took a look at the building, kind of did a quick clean over there, made sure all the vehicles were off the property, everything was off the property. We're going to get some quotes here coming up pretty soon to paint the place up, hopefully before winter, make it look somewhat presentable. Because I know for years it's been pretty much an eyesore for all of us. The only plans we have at this time is going to be temporary plans for that building. We're just going to go ahead and use it for the winter for the Parks Department to go ahead and store their equipment in there because they currently don't have a decent building to do so. So for this winter, we're going to let them go ahead and store their equipment in there. Come spring, if the council wants to change plans for it or whatever, that's up to the council.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. The only other thing I have, Mr. President, I'm going to turn to Sheila if she knows off the top of her head, but down at Silos at Sanders Farm, they have started construction on the third building. It is a 455,000 square foot building that does have a tenant. It is highly confidential, and I will leave it at that. Sheila, what was their building permit fee?
$127,576.20.
That is miscellaneous revenue coming into the town.
Could you be a little more exact, please?
I'm sorry. I always remember the big ones, sorry.
Yes, so, thank you.
Farmland payment.
And then we also have next to Mr. Svetnoff's office, the Avante building has all their walls up 55,000 square foot, Sheila? 55,000 square foot building being built by Holiday Corporation. So that is it for now on economic development, Mr. President.
Thank you. Parks and Recreations, Mrs. Uselak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had one birthday party last weekend at Crescent Lake Park, and everything is order. Excuse me, I have laryngitis. Everything is in order in the parks, and all we're waiting for now is the leaves to be cleaned and picked up
Yeah.
when they blow down on the park. Thank you, sir.
Abandoned and blighted properties, Councilman Hardaway.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dean and Barbara White Community Center, Mr. Pettit.
Yes, Mr. President, we had a committee meeting, Leonard and Jeff and I, Councilwoman Neal was in attendance, as well as staff, Torrance and Michael. Went through several different items. Pleased to report that Michael and Torrance, with the assistance of Sender, with Trista, I believe has resolved the yoga problem. They will take care of that yet this week, Michael, with the yoga instructor, and they will get with her and let her determine when the next class will be. We had a couple of citizens come to the committee meeting, which is always good to get their input. So I believe that situation has been resolved. Went through a list of about 7 items and a couple others with the staff on the capital physical side that Torrance and I, or I specifically, will reach out to core construction on some things out at the center, doors, door handles for Mr. Minchuk. Then we also touched on, not in detail, Joe, but kind of around some of the issues with Pop Warner and the lease. And when Michael and Torrance get some information, Mr. President, I can call the meeting. I would strongly encourage the entire council, if you want to call a workshop or we can do a committee meeting. Michael and Torrance and I were talking. When they get the information, they'll let us know that date, and we can schedule, a November workshop or a November committee meeting to go through those numbers as to what's going on with the Pop Warner Football League. That's all I've got, unless Jeff or Leonard have anything else from the committee.
Nothing else from me.
Okay, that's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Special projects, Mr. Hardaway.
No report, Mr. President.
Moving on tonight to department and commission reports. Our representative to the Lake County Solid Waste Management District is Councilman White.
Yes, Mr. President, the leaf back program for unincorporated parts of Lake County has started from the Solid Waste District. That includes Calumet Township, Union Township, Dyer Township. Those are the only ones I can remember at this time. Additionally, we will not have a meeting until November 17th, because we meet bi-monthly. So we'll have that meeting. Other than that, nothing else to add to report.
Thank you. Northern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, our representative is Councilman Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing that came out of Thursday's meeting was that our audit with State Board of Accounts, we came back with no problems, nothing at all. So we were pleased about that, and that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Fire Territory Board, Mr. Minchuk, Mrs. Neal.
They have a meeting scheduled on November 6th.
Okay. Moving on to department reports. Torrance Price, Parks and Recreation.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. 2 things off the top of my head. As we turn the calendar here, we're getting ready to get into November. Last year, we had a pretty warm November, so we cut longer into the month. So we're going to be monitoring that. We have quite a bit of rain that's coming here the next few days, but nothing that's been prohibiting us from doing anything right now. We'll keep monitoring the leaves. So if the weather stays good, we'll continue to cut as long as we possibly can before we have to worry about getting out snow blowers and all that other fun stuff. Other thing, too, is from NERC, we have our trackers now, so we're going to be looking to place those out at a couple of our parks to track how many participants are using our trails. Thank you.
Will you share that with us each month then, or how's that going to work?
Yes.
Okay. Police Department, Chief Nusis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've started planning for our upcoming holidays, getting officers in certain areas, make sure we're focusing on certain areas, because it's the time of year where you get the most amount of thefts and armed robberies, unfortunately. So we're taking action to make sure that all of our businesses and our residents and people visiting our town are protected. There's been a slight increase in vehicle break-ins throughout the town. I'm going to venture out and say that almost 90% of them were a result of people not locking their doors. So I'm asking for everybody's cooperation to please lock your doors. You don't lock, if you have your doors locked, then it makes it much more difficult for anybody to get in. They mostly want to grab change, phones, chargers, whatever they can find. It's not a lot of valuable things that they're going after, but whatever they can find, they'll take. We're still targeting the problem areas for speed. We've been hitting different, we had about 25 different areas that we've been hitting, and Councilman Minchuk kind of touched it. And we're still on it. We're still writing tickets. I believe there was about a 300 more tickets that were written in the last month than there were the previous month as a result. So it's working, just not enough of us, and I think people have forgotten how to drive properly. So we're continuing with our crime suppression unit, our targeted crime suppression unit. We've had pretty decent success. We've been focusing on those areas where the break-ins have been happening, and they're not just really concentrated in one area, they're pretty much all over town. So our guys are going different areas. We're trying to make it as scientific as possible, and times that these are happening, and try to put guys, officers, gals, officers in those areas so they can attempt to catch these people that are doing it. Code enforcement. I see you guys again here this week. I know they cleaned up a lot of that. They didn't meet from when they originally got the dumpster. They cleaned up a lot of it. They were supposed to have it done by not this past Friday, but the Friday before. They failed to do so. So there's tickets being issued. So we have started our process. I don't know if that's.
They moved from back to the front.
I know, but we're starting a process where tickets being written. So, and it's not just that one. There's a lot of other ones we're doing. We're getting a lot of places. Councilman White, I know you had some in your ward as well, where we've been addressing and writing tickets. And last but not least, I'm hoping to see everybody on October 26th at 6 p.m. for our police town talk, where we're going to be discussing pretty much why we're so expensive to the town. So hope to see everybody there. That's it.
At 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, yes.
This
sorry.
Thursday.
Mr. President.
Question, one second, Mr. White. Counselor, we write the tickets at the bad property, right? When do we reach a point where we can just go in and clean it up and just bill the homeowner? Is there
When basically notice is served as a nuisance on the property, and
Okay.
it's under our code, and when we serve it as a nuisance, we can go in and clean it up. Then what we'll do is we'll go in and clean it up, then take the fees incurred from that, put it as a lien against the property.
So, Chief, are you writing the right kind of ticket then, or do we
She's
need
been
to
writing-
change our approach?
She has been, I'm not sure what she's been writing. I think she's been writing for debris or whatever it is, but I am going to make sure that she's writing general nuisance tickets as well.
Okay, there we go. That'll help it. Mr. White?
Yeah, actually, this question is kind of for the attorney. I talked to Chief Costas, about the fact that still seeing vehicles with the engine sitting out, with no engine in there, and it's pretty, looks like an eyesore. So one of the conversations we had was that our ordinance doesn't allow us to go on property to remove those vehicles. So I don't know if we need to amend our ordinance to say that we can go on a piece of property because it's sitting right out there in the open. I just think that if they won't remove it, then we should. So I don't know, do we amend that, or Mr. Costa?
Again, they can be issued as a nuisance ticket,
Same situation.
same situation.
So does that allow us to remove the vehicle, because they're
Eventually.
constantly writing tickets?
Eventually,
Okay.
if we serve the notice period.
And then do they come to court when we write those tickets, or how many tickets do they got to get before they come to court?
No, they'll get a ticket, they'll come to court, and it's up for the town court to decide what the appropriate, judgment is, and what the appropriate fine and penalty.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Planning and Building Director Sheila Shine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one announcement. I had the opportunity to meet with one of the team members from the Edgewater Health Clinic. They asked me this evening to announce that the Edgewater Health Clinic has moved to Merrillville. The University Park Clinic has moved to 5495 Broadway. They are having a open house October 28th from 12 to 4 p.m., and they'll have bouncy houses, free food, blood pressure screening, and many lectures on health screening. They also have joined the chamber, and their ribbon cutting is scheduled for Thursday, October 26th, from 4 to 6 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Sheila, are you going to go into the bounce house?
No, I normally work those. I'll just help man the bouncy house.
Very
I don't
good. Thank
bother
you.
myself with that.
Interim Town Manager Michael Griffin.
Mr. President, members of the council, Madam Clerk Treasurer, thank you. I have distributed to all of you via email or through your packets tonight a copy of the first, which we believe will be a recurrent form of my report. As you know, Section 2.391 requires that staff report monthly to the town council. I had begun the process of reporting to you at each one of your meetings to update about those things I'm aware of. This is the first time that I had a cooperation of all the department heads. Let me say it differently because it sounds as if they weren't cooperating before. Once I invited this, they were eager to help. So this is the first that represents what we can say is truly a staff report. It's our goal to have, it's your second meeting each month. My report really reflect all the staff report. It is there in completion. I was going to add as a summary that we are having a town talk this Thursday. We will talk about what it costs to do police work, but we'll also have a canine demonstration too. I think that's cool. But it's a good thing. We want to encourage you. We know it's going to be co-scheduled with our trunk or treat. We don't think that's a problem. We think that they can actually be quite complementary. We hope that people will come to both. They certainly can be safe that night because we'll have police there talking about how they do things and who could be safer then. And then I did want to remind everyone that our staff meeting this month will not be tomorrow, but will be Thursday at the request of Dr. Lackey. He asked to brief our staff and leadership about some of his early findings in our diversity initiative. And that will be at 2 p.m. rather at 10 a.m. So I want to remind staff, I'm sure that we've gotten that out. You do have my report before you. Unless there's a question with regard to the report or something of import to the council, I will be happy to be seated.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Moving on tonight to general orders, we have the addition of the first reading ordinance 23-25. Michael must be used to putting the year in front of it too. We just used the 23-25, Mike. And I'll let you go ahead and preface this if you don't mind, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to do it. While we do think that we need some time to make sure that what we've identified, the fiscal advisor and I have identified, one of the techniques that we can use to preserve the aspirations that were represented in units of service in the 2024 budget, which is a way to think of it, is really supposed to be a blueprint to try to marshal our resources to serve the people of Merrillville as well as we can. Sometimes we are limited by what the money can be used for by state law, and sometimes we're limited by the state law's limitations on what we can do in terms of growing revenue. Having said that, the Budget and Finance Committee had tasked us to try to locate other ways that we might be able to, what I call, conserve current resources that then would make it available for next year. This ordinance, as proposed, identified what we believed would be areas of surplus in existing departments of the general fund, the sum of which adds up to about $100,000, that we think would bring us closer to our targeted goal for spending. And we'll talk about that targeted goal later when you take up the ordinance for the budget for next year. We're asking tonight only in order to have the opportunity to have this taken up in time, not necessarily tonight, but to allow us, if the council is so inclined, after review, to pass this or something less to allow it to be done before we have to receive what's called a 1782 notice. The state will review the budget that the council will pass this evening, After they review it, they will send us a preliminary budget order called a 1782 notice that allows the town one last chance, working with the fiscal office, and I hope our office, to take a look at it and say, we now have a better handle, for example, on all of our revenues, because it'll be closer to the end of the year that we're going to have this year, which is part of the budget process. And then to make some recommended changes for the final budget order before it becomes final. Having this instrument in place would allow us to, I'm going to say very inside baseball, change the line 2 number, which is really the number that represents what we think we're going to need from July 1st of 2023 to December 31st of 2023, because that's part of the budget process every year. This would change that, which would give us more room for next year's budget. But we do think it would be wise to vet, but we're consistent with the rules of the council. We're just asking that it be introduced by a willing member of the council this evening. We do apologize that we didn't get it to you in time to go out normally. We thank you for amending your agenda to allow it to be added. We really were tasked with this. You saw how many meetings we've already had of the Budget and Finance Committee from the memoranda that you've already adopted. We actually reviewed this plan on Monday of this week. So once we got clearance, we thought we could get the ordinance to you. And pursuant to the rules in the Merrillville Code, you can, as you did, add it to your agenda. But rather than go through the processes that would be available if we were going to take it up entirely tonight, we're just asking for you to take the steps necessary to get it through at least first reading, if possible. That will give us a chance to have further discussion with the department heads to explain why our rationale for the choices we made, and for the council to make a final determination if they want to embrace this in its entirety or something less. Any of it will help the budget reconciliation that we're hoping for.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Madam Clerk Treasurer.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hardaway, second by Mr. Pettit, for approval of ordinance 23-25. It's reduction in budgetary items in the amount of $100,000. Questions or comments on the motion?
This is first reading, Mr. President, correct?
First reading. Did I say first reading? I did, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you do.
Good, thank you. Questions or comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk Treasurer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Hardaway?
Yes.
Mr. Minchuk?
Yes.
Mrs. Uzelak?
Yes.
Mr. Pettit?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Bella?
Yes,
All 7 in favor.
motion carries, Mr. Griffin.
I thank the council.
Moving on tonight to our most important matter is the ordinance 23-24 on second and final reading. It's an ordinance or resolution for the appropriations and tax rates for the budget year of 2024.
Madam Clerk Treasurer, would you read this into the records, please?
Go ahead, Kelly.
You want me to read all the funds and the amounts? Or you just want me to read the beginning of the
blue, yeah,
resolution?
the totals.
Just the totals? Okay. All right. The fund totals for the adopted budget is $26,548,600. The adopted tax levy is $14,278,418. The adopted tax rate is .6899. Under our home ruled funds, the total amount is $18,881,130.
Thank you, ma'am. Make a motion that we adopt the 2024 budget with the figures that were just presented to us.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hardaway, second by Mr. Pettit. Madam Clerk Treasurer, if you don't mind, would you please read into the record the be it ordained, resolved?
Sure.
That paragraph.
Be it ordained and resolved by the Merrillville Town Council that for the expenses of the Merrillville Civil Town for the year ending December 31st, 2024, the sums herein specified are hereby appropriated and ordered set apart out of the several funds herein named and for the purposes herein specified, subject to the laws governing the same. Such sums herein appropriated shall be held to include all expenditures authorized to be made during the year, unless otherwise expressly stipulated and provided for by law. In addition, for the purposes of raising revenue to meet the necessary expenses of the Merrillville civil town, the property tax levies and property tax rates as herein specified are included herein. Budget Form 4B for all funds must be completed and submitted in the manner prescribed by the Department of Local Government Finance. This ordinance resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approved by the Merrillville Town Council.
Thank
On
you,
today's
Madam.
date.
Mr. President.
Mr. White.
Yeah, I just had a question, and for the recycling grant, it says that the revenues that came in were 200,000, and the fund balance of, as of 9/30, is 221,000. Are we spending the money for the recycling grants?
You just haven't spent it yet. You will be.
Okay,
That's the leaf collection program, just started.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Griffin, anything to add? And I also have Carl Sender here from Sender and Dalton, in case we have any more detailed questions.
Mr. President, I'll paint with a broad stroke. The sum of the requests from all the department heads pursuant to the practice and the workflow that supports the budget process here was $13 million for the general fund we're talking about, not in the aggregate. The general fund is the place where our budget challenges are most because it's subject to the property tax limitations and the max levy. We were able to, with the work and cooperation of the department heads and the many more, there'll be more meetings that you're going to approve minutes in because we met several times since this time. We were able to bring that down to roughly $12,300,000. We think that we've got because estimating this kind of revenue, the property taxes are not so difficult. It's all the other things that we collect. We think that that gap has been closed, and we think this is a funded budget. But we felt that if we could get closer to 12.2, which is why this other ordinance we've asked you at least have a first reading on tonight, we hope you'll still consider. The closer we get to that number, the more confident we feel that this will be not only a funded budget, but it'll be very close to full balance. You're going to be very close as it is. We think that took a lot. We tried very hard to try to separate wants from needs, but I will be frank, I've worked with a lot of department heads in my career. The department heads here have already been fairly good about discerning their needs from wants. So really, it was about the needs to serve the people of Merrillville. And I like to say dollars are units of service. We're setting a policy when we do that. We're constrained by our growth and the needs here and the limitations of operating revenues that we can generate. I'm hopeful I can help my successor, and while I'm still here, the council find some new paths to that. But I do believe that it was a responsible budget. Everybody worked hard. There was a lot of heavy lifting, both at the staff level and at the policy level, and we thank you. I have to say I enjoyed working on this with you very much, and we're proud that you did this. It will be filed within 5 days, which the statute requires. And the moment that I believe Madam Clerk Treasurer will receive the 1782 notice, my prayer is she'll share that with us so we can take that other measure and we'll decide whether or not any further steps are necessary with this ordinance that we asked you to at least introduce this evening. Unless there's a specific question, I'm again happy to be seated.
Thank you. Mr. Hardaway, anything to add?
No, as Mr. Griffin said, a lot of hours went into finalizing this thing. I appreciate everyone that participated in this endeavor. Mr. January, for your involvement in this process. We appreciate it. And I think that coming into January, we'll have some great things coming out of the Clerk Treasurer's office. Thank you for your input. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Very good. Any other questions or comments from the council? This is a second reading ordinance. I'll open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Reference to ordinance 23-24, town budget for 2024. Oh, Mr. January. Clerk Treasurer-elect, Eric.
Yes. Hey, thank you all for coming, and thank you for recognizing me, and thank you, Mr. Hardaway. One of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting that we had in regards to the budget, because of my background and what I plan on doing with the Treasurer's office, I want to bring in some more people that have professional designations so that we can do a lot of the stuff that the clerk treasurer's office is supposed to do. And I know it's last minute, but I requested that some of the money that is currently being used for outside consultants that are currently doing work that the clerk treasurer is supposed to do should be transferred to the clerk treasurer's office so that we can have this stuff brought in-house and actually save the town some money in the long term, such as a lot of the budget prep work. The treasurer is supposed to be the fiscal agent of the town. And when I participated in a lot of the meetings, I didn't get that feel that the treasurer was a central figure when it came to money. And that's something I do want to change, because in order for Merrillville to grow and prosper without the use of a whole bunch of debt, we have to have somebody and competent staff in the office that's going to be able to do everything that the town council wants to do and envision, so that we basically don't make some mistakes with our money. So I don't know if it's too late, because we're probably about to adopt this right now, but going into the new year, if we can't make the change now, that's certainly something that we have to address. Because right now, the treasurer's office is not being used to its maximum capacity, and I definitely want it to be taken to a whole nother level.
Sure.
And one other question for Joe. In regards to the money that we get from the local area income taxes, currently 20% of that money is going towards building the RD, the train stations. Is there any way, because I know that there are court decisions saying that we basically were obligated to giving 20% of that money, and in my opinion, is not necessarily benefiting the town. Is there any way that we can look into taking that to the next level? Because it would be worth it for the town if we can get that down to 8%, like everybody else is paying, versus giving 20% of our money, which is probably about $200,000 a year.
We have done extensive research into this, and we are obligated in our commitment that was initially given, 25%. So there is no rewriting the agreement, there is no backing out of the agreement, because if we do that, there's serious penalties and serious litigation that come upon a town.
And how long is that agreement? How long are we going to be bound to giving 20% of our local area income taxes to?
I think the term is 20 years, if I recall.
Oh, that's horrible. It's worth litigating. I mean, for that, we're talking about
it's worth
$4 million or so at a minimum.
It's worth litigating if you have a stance. Right now, we don't have a stance on that. So if you'd like to litigate it, when you come in your office in January, feel free to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, Madam Clerk Treasurer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Hardaway?
Yes.
Mr. Minchuk?
Yes.
Mrs. Uzelak?
Yes.
Mr. Pettit?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
And Mr. Bella?
Yes.
7 in favor.
7-0, motion passes. I believe Kelly will have a document for us to sign, and we'll pass it around. Okay, council? Moving on tonight to resolutions, we have Resolution 2336. It's a resolution of the Town of Merrillville transferring monies of the 2023 budget within the CCI fund. The decrease from other equipment's $12,005. The increase to contract services is $12,005. The net effect is zero.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Pettit, second by Mr. Hardaway for approval of Resolution 23-36. Questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Moving on tonight to Resolution 23-37. There's another transfer of funds in a variety of funds, decreasing from the Parks Department, Parks non-reverting funds, and increasing a variety of funds in the Parks non-reverting funds. The decrease is $103,606. The increase is the same. The net effect is zero.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Minchuk, second by Mrs. Uzelak for approval of Resolution 23-37, transfer of funds in the Parks Department. Questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Resolution 23-38. It's a resolution of the Town of Merrillville, Lake County, Indiana, transferring monies within the general fund of the 2023 budget. This one is a decrease in the part-time secretary out of the general fund. The increases in contractual services. The amount is $45,819. The net effect is zero.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hardaway with a second by Mrs. Uselak for approval of Resolution 23-38, the transfer of funds. Questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Our last resolution tonight is Resolution 23-39. It's a resolution of the Town of Merrillville transferring monies in the 2023 budget within the local roads and streets budget. The decrease in the diesel line item is $40,000. The increase in contractual services is $40,000, and the net effect is zero.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hardaway, second by Mr. Minchuk for approval of Resolution 23-39, the transfer of funds. Any questions or comments from the council?
Just for clarification, it was
Mr. Minchuk.
23-39, correct?
I'm sorry?
Just for clarification, it was 23-39, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. No other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on tonight to the American Rescue Plan. We have an AP voucher summary for the ARP purchases for October 24th. Mr. Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's voucher is $23,591.16. I'll make a motion that we approve this voucher for $23,591.16.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hardaway with a second by Mr. Minchuk for approval of the AP voucher from the American Rescue Plan. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Ms. Shine, do we have any BZA or large gathering actions before us?
No actions tonight, Mr. President.
Any old business before us? Is there any new business before us? Moving on to public comment. If you have a public comment, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we allow 3 minutes.
Good evening. Sabina Miller, 3120 West 75th Place. I have just listened to the fact that there is a 20-year agreement to give 20% of our tax revenue to some train station, and that we cannot get out of this for 20 years without litigation. So my question is, how did we agree to pay for something that we don't have, that's not even near us? And when will the 20 years be up?
I don't know exactly, I wasn't here when it was done, so.
Rich, you want me to take it?
Go ahead.
All right, I'll take it, Sabine. We had agreed, at the time Congressman Visklosky was in office. Pete's hometown is Merrillville. Pete brought in money to 93rd Avenue Phase 1 federal aid, 93rd Avenue Phase 2 federal aid. He brought in money for Independence Hill along Independence Street for a water line project. We felt, or I felt, it was proper to participate in this. This is not a train station, with all due respect to Mr. January. This is the West Lake corridor that is being designed. It is going from downtown Hammond down into Dyer to bring people in. There's also an offshoot that will eventually hit the Grand Trunk line that does go through Merrillville and onto Valparaiso in Phase 2. So at the time, we felt it was appropriate to honor the congressman's request. And yes, we did do a higher percentage, Eric, you're right. And Joe is correct. We tried this before with the former clerk treasurer and the former town attorney. They wanted to get out of it, and we are contractually obligated. We ended up having to pay back a lot because the former clerk treasurer was not putting in enough money. He was trying to fight it as well, and it came back and bit us. So that's basically the historical side to that, if you will.
So did I understand correctly, there will be some kind of a train station in Phase 2 in Merrillville?
Yes, but it probably, Sabine, it is probably years down the road, to be honest with you, perfectly honest with you. It will be, I don't know. I mean, I've never, a rail line, we'd have to talk to the South Shore people, the NICD people. I don't know what the timeline is on that. Congressman Brevand's office probably, Mark Lopez is still in that office. I mean, he and Elizabeth Johnson, they might have a better timeline on when that's gonna take place.
So when did we agree to this? When are our 20 years up?
Boy, Rich, you remember when I don't know, it was the first year that we got to low it because we took some of the option income tax and gave officers raises. We did I think, Costa, we did a 3-year, that's when the officers got the 3-year, $10,000 raise. And then we took the other money and sent it to the Westlake Corridor project. Now, the other thing that we were told.
Halfway through or something, just roughly, are we halfway?
I'm sorry?
Are we like halfway through? Are we?
I'm guessing we're probably, it's probably been 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that was, thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. White?
Yes, I have an additional question. Excuse me. I just want to know if there's some plans that could show us, I don't even know who has those plans, that could show us that it tees and come down to.
Probably NICD or the congressman's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or RDA.
Or the RDA, yeah, Michael.
Do they have a location in mind? Because I'm looking at the train tracks, it looks like it's pretty tight down there. I was just wondering if they have a location in mind that.
I think, Rich, they were talking about that. Remember that strip, that new building that was built on the south side of the tracks, the east side of Broadway, Leonard? You know which one I'm talking about? Had a VA. They
Right.
have a veterans center there.
Right.
I think that was gonna be the location eventually. And again, when I say eventually, this is years now, I'm guessing. Again, it's been so long since we did that, Rich, I'd have to dust that off with the congressman's office and see what information Pete handed over to Frank. You know, I don't know.
Nothing else.
Thank you.
Okay, so my next question is, and I did kind of post it on the Merrillville PD page. Gary was nice enough to publish numbers about the last 2 years of the statistics that they came up with out of the use of the LPRs. I wonder if we have a similar statistic. It sounds very successful what Gary did, but I wonder if we are working on a statistic similar to the one that Gary published.
Unfortunately, we can't provide an actual, a proper statistic because some of our LPRs were not up. The Indiana Department of Transportation kept changing their minds as to what the rules were on it. So it took us a long time. I had to have the help of Councilman Hardaway, who reached out downstate to a senator to help us with this. It was a huge to-do, so I cannot give you an accurate number of what, I give you numbers of what we have, but it's not gonna be a fairly accurate number of what it could have been if those LPRs were in service.
So maybe like next year, we can get something like similar to what they published?
Yeah, so believe it or not, this has been like almost an 18-month process, and that was with help from downstate. So we are looking for our LPRs, all of our LPRs, to be up and running within the next month. So after that, we hopefully will have, then we'll be able to get a proper statistics.
Awesome, thank you.
Sabine, we have other residents waiting, and we're kind of
I know,
over
but
on time, if you don't
Some
mind.
of my time was taken up by other folks, so I just have quickly.
Okay. Finish up,
I
please.
wonder if we consider the eminent domain takeover a possible candidate for an animal shelter, because we're obviously still struggling with that. I don't need a comment about that now. The other part is, I know that a resident who lives at 78th Avenue and Taney complained about like signs in her yard. Well, I happen to drive by, I live right next to her. And there is like all kinds of equipment in her yard, and there is a gigantic hole unprotected in the sidewalk, so I feel like somebody should tend to that.
What's the address there?
It's right at 78th Avenue and Taney, right at that corner. You couldn't miss it.
Mr. Griffin?
They're still working there. And there's really no other place where they could park the equipment.
Well, we
No,
shouldn't
I
have.
understand
big
that, but
hole
that
down.
gigantic hole is really
But what?
dangerous.
I'm sorry, I can't understand.
They have a gigantic hole in the ground right there on the sidewalk.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be repairing that.
I understand that, but they haven't protected the hole.
Oh, they haven't
No.
covered it, you're saying?
No.
Oh, I don't know then.
We'll take a look. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Ursula Peppers. I live at 1201 West 56th Avenue. Council, you guys look really nice in your pink tonight, and that's nice. But my question on my way coming here, I drove through a couple neighborhoods, and they have speed humps. I was so impressed. But I live on a four-corner road, Indy 500, and I've asked before, can I get something where I live, like 56th and Pierce? There's a four-way stop sign, and nobody stops either direction. The buses don't even stop. It's just really like, go for it. I just sit out there and watch. I asked before, somebody came and painted and sprinkled like some salt down. But now I see we get the plastic humps. Can somebody look and visit that? Because it's like a drag strip right there.
Sure.
Thank you.
56th and Pierce, right? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Alice Medstead from the Merrillville Historical Society. I just thought I'd follow up with some of the discussion. Oh, I'm not last, okay. Some of the discussion last week about the Sauk Trail marker, and I just wanted to provide just a little insight of why it's placed where it is in front of the museum. And when it was knocked down multiple times, of course, we work with the Indiana Historical Society. They are the people that pass out historical signs and control them, and they control everything about them. So after this had happened, of course, many times, we consulted them about what to do, and they advised us, number one, don't put the old one back up, because there was issues, in addition to the actual structure of it, to some of the wording on it, it's somewhat antiquated and belonged in a museum. And then also advised that we might want to consider going forward as a community to have a new sign. And the cost of a new sign through the Indiana Historical Society that they design these things is somewhere over $3,000. So we at the museum, of course, we like historical signs. So as we go forward, we'll be looking at that and seeing what we can come up with and seeing how we might fund it. But I did want to follow up that we did place it in accordance with what the Indiana Historical Society told us to do. So they have, again, specific rules about the signage of things. So it's real interesting. If you go to their site, you can see all the different topics and where all the signs in the state of Indiana are. So it's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got the sign in case anybody wants to.
Brian Messarch, 201 East 68th Place. Thank you for the update on the sign. That's actually very interesting. I know Chris and Chris are here. Perhaps we should have a private meeting to get this sign thing situated. But the $3,300 for a new / replica sign is really just a drop in the bucket since we just got $127,000 that we don't know what to do with. So let's have a motion to spend $3,500 and get a new sign. All in favor? Okay. We'll have the second reading at the next meeting. The use of eminent domain to take someone's property for no apparent reason other than to provide a garage for the Parks Department is anti-American in every way, shape, and form. I don't even understand why. Why would we do that? We went and took someone's property for what reason? No answers? No.
What are you talking about, the most property?
Yes, the most property.
We own the.
I got calls on the east side
Hang
of
on.
Broadway that people got tired of looking at all the cars, Brian. Why don't you call Wally Cook and Maxim's and ask them?
Why don't we talk about?
Well, if you, hang on. So that is in Ward 3, and it's right across the street from Mr. Pettit's ward as well. Mr. Pettit and myself, ever since I first came to the council 6 years ago, have been fielding calls every day about the problems they had at that particular facility. There's always junk cars there, they're building up. We've tried several sit-down meetings. We tried to execute several different actions to try to control it, and we could not. Also, we own the property right next door to it that adjoins to it. We possibly have future plans, we possibly don't have future plans for that property, but that would just enhance those plans as well. So it's a no-brainer.
So.
The other issue, Brian, with eminent domain is it's a fair market value. We have to have 2 appraisals, according to the State Board of Accounts. That money was paid to the property owner to the tune of almost $475,000 out of the Broadway TIF to clean up that property because that property owner was irresponsible and sloppy.
Out of due respect, can you please speak like your office is supposed to speak? You're coming off loud.
I've always been loud, ma'am, for 60 years. Ask anybody that knows me. I actually don't need a microphone, do I, guys? No.
Back away from your microphone because you sound like you're attacking a teenager.
I think he's attacking the council.
Okay, does that, anything else, Brian?
Yes, actually, I do. I'm not attacking a counselor. I get to speak my opinion about any political official. I do. And by the way, eminent domain is wrong. Right across the street, almost diagonal from Mr. Berger's property, is a house that's been there for well over 10 years. And calling it a house is generous. It is a death trap that feral animals live in. Why is that right on Broadway allowed to exist within walking distance of the junior high school? Closer to the junior high school is another building that has mold growing on the side. Every window is broken out. Why don't we do anything about that? Right down the street from Voida's house is another house that is so overgrown with bushes, you can't see the front windows of the front door or even the garage door. That has a Pettit sign in front of it. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for noticing the houses. There's a church on 73rd that is a dump, and I was over there today. It looks like the basement is flooded with water, anywhere from 1 to 2 foot of water. But we're not doing anything about that. This is things that have been in place for not a week, not 2 weeks, years. You've had multiple terms to deal with this. No, you come into my neighborhood and ask for votes, and you don't help us keep our property values up.
So Brian.
That's what my problem, that's what my problem is.
Brian, it's public comment, not attack a councilman that you're running for office again. So let's get back on track, please.
Okay, back on
Please.
track. Curtis Park, which is also in Ward 6, it has not had a park sign since the tornado blew it down. All the parks are not okay.
We're designing new signs, Brian. You know that from Mrs. Neal's reports.
I don't know that.
Well, you're here at every meeting, sir, so I don't know.
I know I am here at every meeting.
Okay.
We want to design gateway signs for the town of Merrillville. The town of Merrillville doesn't need gateway signs. The town of Merrillville needs neighborhood signs, like neighborhood signs for Turkey Creek, neighborhood signs for Merrill Heights, so that people actually know, especially with the old school neighborhoods that were the originals, that the developers weren't required to have signs. Why don't we put up some nice signs for these neighborhoods so that we all can share in some happiness? That's my problem. And what these people have, the disrespect. I might sound aggressive and disrespectful because I'm only meeting the aggressive, disrespectful nature. Because I've been coming here now for 2.5 years, every day. And what do I get? No, is there any cooperation? Is there any, let's have a meeting? No one has even bothered to be like, hey, Brian, why don't you head that committee? Go to town. No. Because no one is interested in working with the residents. You are always working against the residents. Mr. Pettit blamed Mr. Berger for making his driveway so nice that people thought it was a road. That's not the way that we should treat our residents. That's part of the problem. And at some point in time, you're gonna have to understand, you're gonna have to take some input to see that maybe part of the problem is yourselves.
Well, I'll be a lot shorter. Chris Holsey, 800 West 73rd Avenue. Folks, just asking if we can have a private meeting so we can bring our little project to a satisfactory conclusion. Can we schedule something where we can get together? Yep, we'll do that. Okay. Who should I contact, Mr. Bella?
Oh.
We'll go through town manager, please. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.